Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, I want to try to separate policy and politics for a second. I know it's hard to do around this place, but I thought Senator Cornyn made a very good point in his opening remarks. I think Senator Schmidt made the same point that the policy here is very important. And I want to ask you your opinion on the policy. Professor, tell me briefly, I know you came to talk about auto pens, but tell me briefly about the 25th Amendment.
Welcome back to the Constitution Corner, where we dig into the tough issues, defend our founding principles, and shine a light on the corruption and cowardice threatening our republic. If you're new here and believe in God, country, and the Constitution, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Your support helps us continue to bring you the truth and defend the values that make America great.
Well, Senator, the 25th Amendment provides the process by which to implement a principle that's in the original Constitution, which is when the president's unable to exercise the powers and duties of the presidency, somebody else exercises them, starting with the vice president. The 25th Amendment sets up a process by which, if there's a question whether the president is able to do that, the vice president and the heads of the executive departments can temporarily basically put the vice president in as acting president, and then Congress ultimately decides the question.
Well, the standard, is it not, Professor? The standard is disability of the president. Is that correct?
Unable to exercise the powers and duties.
Okay.
Yes.
Here's what I would like your opinion on, and the opinion of these two gentlemen here. You have all been staffers. You've worked in government. You've had a boss. In Mr. Spicer's case, his boss was the President of the United States. Let's suppose the president, you were using your experience as a staffer. You were working for the president, any president. Hypothetically a president. And let's suppose the president started talking like he was from outer space. Let's suppose the president became fatigued very easily. He couldn't finish a sentence without taking a nap. Let's suppose the president, he was just physically in bad shape, mentally and physically. Mentally, he may or may not have, you're not a doctor, neurodegenerative disease, but physically you can see you could bake a Thanksgiving turkey in the time it takes him to walk across the stage. What do you think, as a member of his staff, what do you think is your moral obligation to say, wait a minute, the president can't do the job anymore? I know you're loyal folks. You believe in your president, this president, whichever president. I'm speaking hypothetically. You're loyal. You want to be a good staffer, but you also have a moral obligation. How do you reach that decision, Professor? And I'll go to each of you.
Senator, I think the first thing you would have to do in a situation like that is exercise your own judgment. How serious is this problem? Because everybody has moments when they lose focus, it happens. But if somebody thinks this is a really serious problem, I think the first thing to do is the most difficult, which is to say to the president, because the 25th Amendment also provides that the president can say, I'm unable to exercise the powers and duties of my office.
And suppose the president
That would be extremely difficult, but I think it should be done.
Look, trust me, I can. And it's clear to you that he has neurodegenerative disease and he can't. What do? Do you have a moral obligation as a staff member to go to the American people and say, we've got a problem here, it may cost me my career?
Senator, I think at that point you have an obligation to talk to the vice president,
okay,
who is in charge of the Section 4 process under the 25th Amendment.
What about you, Mr. Wald? You have a moral obligation. I understand you want it to go away, you want to work it out with him, but you can't. When does a staffer have a moral obligation to stand up and say, he can't be president anymore. She can't be.
Well, Senator, the 25th Amendment only works if individual staffers or officers of the United States exercise that kind of moral judgment.
That's what I'm asking you.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think always, as the professor said, I mean, the presidency is an enormous burden, so it would be not one instance, it would have to be several instances of a failure to exercise judgment.
How do you make that decision? You're the staffer. I get it.
Yeah, well, I think it begins with prayer, of course, but after that, I think it's conversation with other staffers, and if you're unable to confront the president or to raise the issue with the vice president, you should resign.
What about you, Mr. Spicer? Do you stand up and do it and tell the truth and run, or do you have a greater obligation to your boss?
Well, luckily, I didn't have that problem. But I would say that you have a moral obligation as an American, as a citizen, as a human being. If the leader of the free world cannot conduct themselves to make the decisions that are critical to this country and to the world, you absolutely have a moral obligation to follow the chain of command. And if they don't act, then you must.
Do either of you gentlemen disagree with that? Professor?
Senator, I think acting means talking to the people who have the responsibility or in a position under the Constitution to do something.
You don't
about the
agree with
situation.
Mr. Spicer?
Senator, I'm not sure exactly what he has in mind, other than talking to the people who can make the decision.
I'm just trying to ask, you've all been staffers. Suppose you go to everybody you're supposed to go to, and they all say, my advice to you is to shut up. Do you have a moral obligation as a staffer to say, look, this person can't be president of the United States. It isn't policy. He physically can't do it.
Senator Kennedy, it's not a question of whether a staffer has that obligation. It's whether you as an American have that obligation. And I think each and every one of us does.
Yeah, but you can see it. An American can't. Professor, what do you think?
Senator, I think there are situations under which someone in that position should speak publicly, but I also think that the views of a single individual who is not the person who is constitutionally responsible for taking measures should be considered by the public as just the views of of one individual who has some information about the subject.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Tillis.
Today we're tackling one of the most sobering, urgent discussions taking place in Washington, one the media would rather you ignore. In a recent Senate hearing, Senator John Kennedy opened a line of questioning that cuts to the heart of national leadership and constitutional survival. What happens when the President of the United States is no longer mentally or physically fit to lead? This wasn't some partisan smear or political attack. It was a deeply necessary, constitutionally grounded discussion about the 25th Amendment, our legal safeguard when a president is incapacitated. Let's be clear, this isn't about age. This is about capability. This is about whether the leader of the free world can still carry out the duties of the office. And Senator Kennedy painted a hypothetical that hit a little too close to home for anyone paying attention. A president who rambles incoherently, fatigues quickly, and appears visibly confused in public. Sound familiar? The hearing featured a professor and former government staffers, including Sean Spicer, and they were asked directly, what do you do when the president is no longer capable of doing the job? Now, what we heard was a mix of legal explanations, moral hedging, and bureaucratic caution. The professor outlined the process. The 25th Amendment allows the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to declare the president unfit. Congress then decides. Simple in theory, terrifying in practice. Because here's the truth. The system only works if people are willing to act. And as we heard, that's the problem. One of the witnesses said that a staffer must begin with prayer, talk with other staffers, and maybe resign if nothing changes. Another emphasized that it takes multiple serious incidents, not just a single bad moment, to consider action. And all of them danced around the hard reality. People are afraid. Afraid to speak up. Afraid to lose their jobs. Afraid of political backlash. What does that mean for us, the American people? It means that if the president becomes incapacitated, if he is physically or mentally unable to lead, there's no guarantee that anything will be done. Not because the Constitution doesn't allow it, but because the people with the power to act are too weak to do what's right. And that's where Senator Kennedy's brilliance shines through. He didn't just explore legal theory. He exposed the cowardice of the bureaucracy. He asked, if your president starts talking like he's from outer space, if he shuffles across the stage like he can barely walk, if he needs a nap between every sentence, Do you, as a staffer, have a moral obligation to step up? As a conservative, as a patriot, as someone who believes the Constitution is more than just ink on paper, I say yes. Absolutely. This isn't just a moral dilemma. It's a matter of national security. We cannot afford to have a commander-in-chief who is not commanding anything. Let's be real. If this were Donald J. Trump, if he had even one moment of visible weakness, CNN would be running 25th Amendment emergency banners. The New York Times would be calling for his removal. Hollywood would be tweeting in all caps. But because the current president is a Democrat propped up by a compliant media and a terrified staff, we're all just supposed to look the other way? No, not on this channel. Not on our watch. The Constitution was built to outlast kings, tyrants, and yes, even presidents who are no longer capable. The 25th Amendment is there not to insult the president, but to protect the people. To maintain the continuity of government. To ensure that when the president can't carry the torch, someone else does. But it doesn't work unless people have courage. And let's be honest, courage is in short supply in D.C. This hearing was a wake-up call. Not just about this president, but about the culture of cowardice around him. People more concerned about their careers than the country. People who whisper behind closed doors but refuse to speak truth in public. People who serve the office but not the Constitution. So what can we do? We can demand transparency. We can pressure Congress to uphold its duty under the 25th Amendment. We can raise our voices, loudly and legally, to say, if our president is not able to fulfill his duties, we the people deserve leaders who will act. It's time to stop pretending. It's time to start defending. Because the truth is this, our republic is too important to be left in the hands of the timid and the spineless. If you believe that the Constitution matters, that the presidency isn't just a placeholder, and that America deserves a leader who can actually lead, then share this video. Subscribe to the Constitution Corner. Hit that like button. Let your friends and neighbors know that we are watching, we are speaking, and we will not let this country fall without a fight. We are the Constitution Corner, where Americans' root guides its future. Until next time, stand strong, speak truth, and may God bless the United States of America.